It's time to close the book on another long-running Famicom franchise. Ninja Jajamaru Ginga Daisakusen is the 5th, or perhaps 6th if we count the original Ninja-kun, game in Jaleco's Jajamaru series. So far we've had arcade-style action, an RPG, an action-adventure, and finally the series is ending its time on the Famicom with a platformer. Jajamaru was Jaleco's second biggest series on the Famicom, right behind the Moe Pro line of baseball games. The plot of Ninja Jajamaru Ginga Daisakusen is that while stargazing, a UFO crashes right next to Jajamaru and Princess Sakura. The occupant informs them that someone is taking over all of the planets in the universe, which means that the two of them are going to set out to rescue the kings of these worlds. There are 7 worlds to rescue, each with 3 stages and 1 boss. When you start the game, you choose if you want to play 1 or 2 player. It is not 2 player simultaneous. And then if you want to play as Jajamaru or Sakura. Jajamaru can move a bit faster, but Sakura can jump a bit higher. If you don't care, then you can let fate decide. On the stages, you hit A to jump, and as you're jumping you'll stick your weapon out below you to attack. So you defeat enemies by jumping on top of them. This is also how you break special icons to unlock power-ups. The B button, well, the B button becomes complicated. If you have a weapon power-up, then it attacks with it. But otherwise you have to hold down the B button for a few moments, and then your character will start winding up to dash. Push left or right and release to make them run a short distance. If you keep holding down B, then they'll start to do a tumble, and when they dash like this, they'll kill enemies that they collide with. Dashing and jumping is required to get over a lot of obstacles. Besides the additional distance, you get a lot more height. But that brings me to the single biggest problem with Ninja Jajamaru Ginga Daisakusen. Something that you can't see just by watching this video. The movement in this game is terrible. Your characters have a lot of momentum to them. And as a result, if you just press in a direction and hit jump, you're not going anywhere. If you charge up your dash, release, and hit jump immediately afterwards, you're not going anywhere. And the timing between having a full jump and having a stubby jump seems to just be a matter of frames. Which means for anything with really tight timing, the platforming becomes miserable. This comes to a head on stage 2-3, which has gained a reputation as one of the worst stages in any Famicom game. On this stage, and this stage only, your characters can cling to the walls if they press up against them, and then you can repeatedly hit jump to climb them. But you have to jump from these walls to platforms from time to time, and the movement is so inconsistent on these jumps that it's virtually impossible to climb this shaft properly. On top of that, you're going to fall the whole way down to the bottom a lot. The trick to getting your full distance off this wall seems to have been hitting jump right before you reach the top of the arc of moving upward, but the whole thing just doesn't work. Another place where these problems occur is with the World 3 boss. Here you have to mash buttons on both sides of the arena in a short period, otherwise the boss resets. You have to do this 4 times, and doing 4 long-range jumps consistently is pretty hard solely because the controls are so poor. And complicating things there is that the level design is pretty awful here. There's a lot of points where you're going to be required to make some blind leaps of faith into nothing, and hope that there's a platform out there that you can land on, only to find out that the platform that's out there is a tiny 2-brick wide spot. And they're not even consistent with the level goals. About 3/4 of the stages require that you jump into a portal to end the level, and you have to be pressing up when you jump over the portal in order to enter it. The thing is, the portal usually doesn't do anything. After you enter it, you continue on with the same screen, pretty much in the exact same way that you behave when there isn't a portal at the end of the stage. Let's talk about the things that you can collect from those power-up spots. A lot of them will just contain points. Those don't do anything for you here. Sometimes you'll find a spacesuit. Normally you can only take 1 hit from an enemy, but the spacesuit lets you take an additional one. You can also find extra lives in some out-of-the-way spots. You start out with 3 lives and 5 continues. And continuing on a platforming stage kicks you back to the beginning of that world, while continuing from a boss stage lets you continue at that fight. There are two kinds of weapon power-ups. There's a bomb that can be thrown in an arc and explodes, and the explosion lasts for a long time on the screen. There's also a boomerang that flies out ahead of you and comes back. Both of these weapons have limited shots, and picking up another power-up will get rid of the weapon immediately. Because a lot of the enemies are fairly short, your boomerang would go over their head, and that makes the bombs the more useful of the two. Then there are the timed power-ups. These last for about 10 seconds, or until you get another power-up. You could freeze enemies in place for that time, or you could make it so that you spin in the air when you jump. That will defeat enemies that you collide with, so you don't have to land on top of them. The jetpack grants you a spacesuit if you don't have one, and you can keep jumping in the air for as long as you have it. One thing to be aware of with these power-ups is that when the time runs out, you instantly lose all of your momentum. So if you were jumping over a hole, you're going straight down it. You can also collect letters, and if you get 3 of the exact same letter and reach the boss, then a power-up gets thrown onto the screen to use there. I never managed to do this because it rotates through the letters so fast. Also, you only get one shot at that power-up, so if you die while fighting the boss, it's gone forever. The final power-up that you can get turns you into a giant mechanical frog. The frog is indestructible, but it can't walk. It can only jump, which means you can't build up any momentum, which means your jumps are really inconsistent. It's terrible to use. The comment that I was seeing a lot from Japanese players was that Ninja Jajamaru Ginga Daisakusen is the worst game of the Ninja Jajamaru series. It's just half-baked. And it's a game so bad that it nearly killed the series altogether. It would be 6 years before there was another Jajamaru game, and that was it for a long time. There was actually a new game in the series released in 2019 as part of the Jajamaru Collection, a package that collected the Famicom and Game Boy games. Ninja Jajamaru Ginga Daisakusen was a huge disappointment for me when I got it. If you just look at screenshots or even videos online, this looks like a really cool game. But playing it and feeling how unresponsive those controls are, and dealing with all the weird design quirks, this one is just no fun at all.